my channel. Today I have a really exciting video. I'm teaming up with 4 friends for a Fab Five collaboration hosted by Crafting Cousins. What's really fun about today's video is each friend is going to be challenging another friend to use a specific crafting item in their DIYs to come up with some really creative projects. If you guys want to see which item I was challenged with, then just keep watching. For the first DIY today, I'm making a plant grow and bloom picture. For the challenge, I have been challenged with a picture frame. So this is the frame that I'm going to be using in today's video or today's project. And it was 99 cents from the thrift store. I love getting frames from the thrift store because you can get really good quality frames for a really inexpensive price. I first started by painting my entire frame with the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 coats of this paint on my entire frame. I made sure to do the back as well, just to make sure that this looks like a finished project. Once it was all dry, I then took some sandpaper and started sanding around my frame around all of the raised parts, just to give this frame a really distressed rustic look, which you guys know is the style that I love most. I'm also using one of these moss sheets that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I'm using the inside of the frame as a guide to help me cut out the moss sheet to the exact size that I need. I just place that backing of the frame onto the moss and then cut around it. Now that I have my moss sheet all cut down to size, I'm then using some hot glue to attach it to the backing that was inside of the frame. I'm then placing that backing with the moss back inside of my frame and securing it. I'm also going to be using some of these Scrabble letter blocks that spell out the words plant, grow, and also the word bloom. I picked up these Scrabble blocks from Dollar General and I believe they were $3 for an entire pack. I'm placing them onto my moss in my frame how I want them to be before I start gluing them down. I always do this step with all of my projects. I place everything down first where I want it to be before I start gluing, because there's been so many times where I just start gluing right away and then things are not where they should be. I thought it would be really cute to add 3 of these wood flowers underneath my words. I picked these ones up from Hobby Lobby. They came in this pack of unfinished wood icons. These are spring related. They came from the spring shop at Hobby Lobby and they were $4.99, but I paid 40% off of that price. For all of the flower parts of my wood flowers, I'm painting them with my folk art chalk paint in the color Victorian Pink. Then for the stems of the flowers, I'm painting all 3 of them with the folk art chalk paint in the color Sage Shadow. For the last step in this project, I'm just using some hot glue on the back of all of the letters that I've already placed where I want them to be. And then the same with the flowers, I just place hot glue on the back side and then just put them back down into place. And here's the plant grow and bloom picture all finished. This was such an easy and inexpensive project that only took me a few minutes to create, and it's the perfect piece to add just a touch of spring to my home. Now moving right on into DIY number 2 on making a succulent garden. For this project, I'm also using a picture frame. This one is from Dollar Tree and it's a 3.5 by 5 inch frame. I'm first starting out by taking the entire frame apart. Then I'm painting the frame with my folk art chalk paint in the color Castle, and I did 2 coats of this paint. In today's project, I'm also using 4 of these unfinished wooden caps that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I'm painting them with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I only did a 1 coat of paint. Next, I'm taking that cardboard backing that's on the frame and then I'm just ripping off the stand that's on that because I won't need it for this project. And then I'm placing that backing back into my picture frame and securing it. I'm now adding the 4 caps that I've already painted onto the bottom of my frame. These are going to be the little feet on my succulent garden, and I just place hot glue on the bottom of each cap and then just press that down onto the bottom of the frame. For the succulents that I'm using in today's project, most of them are from Dollar Tree. A few of them I have are just from my craft stash that I've purchased a while ago. To start creating my succulent garden, I'm adding some Spanish moss to the backing of my frame. I just placed hot glue right onto the backing and then pressed the Spanish moss on top of that. Once I had all of the Spanish moss added, I then went in with the succulents. Some of the succulents from Dollar Tree do have a little clip on the back. I just pulled that off, which was really easy to do, and then I placed hot glue on the back side of the succulent and then just pressed that down into the Spanish moss. I then continued that same step until I had all of my succulents that I'm going to be using added to my succulent garden. Then to add some more details, I decided to add some of these white mini rocks that I picked up from Dollar Tree around all of my succulents. To attach them, I placed hot glue on the back side of each rock and then placed them down around all of my succulents. I continued that same step until I had white rocks going around all of my succulents. Then to add even more detail, I decided to add some reindeer moss, also from Dollar Tree, around and on top of all of my white rocks. I put the hot glue pretty much right on top of the rocks and then pressed the reindeer moss on top of that. And I did use the end of a paintbrush to do this because I felt like it got the moss in between the rocks really well this way. This is my raised succulent garden all finished. I think it turned out super cute, and I really haven't seen anything like this in store, so I'm so happy I was able to create it all on my own. Before we get into the third DIY today, I do want to talk a little bit more about today's Fab Five Friend Collaboration. These are the other 4 ladies that are participating in today's collab. Make sure that you head on over to all of their channels to see which item they were challenged with. And we are doing a giveaway, a $50 Amazon gift card to one of our lucky subscribers. All you have to do to enter is go leave a comment on each one of our videos. Now for DIY number 3, I'm making a spring picture. For this one, again, of course, I'm using a picture frame. This is an unfinished wood picture frame that I picked up from Michael's. It did come in a pack of either 2 or 3 of these frames, and I'm starting by painting the frame with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I only did 1 coat of this paint. Once that paint was all dry, I then took my folk art chalk paint in the color Castle, and I very lightly dry brushed this color over top of the plaster color to give it a distressed rustic look. As you guys know, that's my favorite style. Once that was all finished, I then moved on and started painting a 3-inch embroidery hoop. I used that same plaster colored paint and only did 1 coat of this paint on my hoop. I'm also using one of these unfinished wood circles. This one was just from my craft stash, but I know that you can get these at pretty much any craft store, and I'm painting this with that same plastered colored chalk paint. I wanted my circle to fit inside of my embroidery hoop, but it wasn't exactly a tight fit and I needed them to stay together. So to get them to stick together, I decided to add some Spanish moss around the entire inside of my embroidery hoop, right where the circle meets. To attach the Spanish moss, I just placed hot glue on the inside and then pressed the moss on top of the glue. I then gave my moss a little bit of a trim so that it looked more put together and not so messy. In this project, I decided to add some of these small wood beads with letters. I am spelling out the word spring, and I'm just stringing those onto a piece of jute. I strung the first letter, which was S, onto my jute and then tied a double knot to hold that bead into place. And then I finished stringing the beads on to spell out the word spring. And then after I had all of the letters on, I wanted to make sure that they stayed secure and didn't move around. So then I did another knot on the end of the jute right next to the letter G. Then I needed to attach the wood beads to the top of my embroidery hoop, so I just placed it where I wanted it to be, wrapped the jute pieces along the back side of my hoop, cut those down, and then hot glued the 2 ends of the jute down into place. Then I decided I wanted to add a little bit of this reindeer moss to the very bottom of my embroidery hoop right over top of that Spanish moss, so I just added some using some hot glue to attach it. And I'm also going to be using 2 of these unfinished wood birds. These did come from that same pack from Hobby Lobby of the little unfinished wood icons that I showed you earlier in the video. And for both birds, I'm painting them with my folk art chalk paint in the color Summer Porch. After the paint was all dry on both of my birds, I'm then using some hot glue on the back side of both of them to attach them to the inside of my hoop right underneath my word spring, and I did it so that both birds were touching with their beaks. Next, I'm taking a piece of jute and I'm tying it in a knot around the top screw of my embroidery hoop. This is going to help me be able to attach my hoop to my picture frame. I'm then taking those 2 strands of jute and I'm going to be attaching them to the back side of the top of my frame. I just cut those jute pieces down and then use some hot glue to attach them. I thought it would be super cute to add a bright ribbon to this project, so I made a simple bow out of this really bright blue colored checked ribbon, and I'm then just cutting those ends of the ribbon down a little bit in a diagonal and then hot glued that bow to the very top of my embroidery hoop. I originally was going to leave the back of this frame open, but then I decided that I wanted it enclosed. So I'm using 2 of these rectangle wood planks. These are from Dollar Tree. They come in a pack of, I believe, 4, and I'm just using 2 of them for this project today, and I decided I wanted to have them stained. So I'm staining them with my Craft Smart wood stain in the color brown from Michaels, and I'm using an old rag to apply the stain. And once I have them all stained, then I'm ready to attach them to the back of the frame so that it's enclosed and not open. To attach the 2 planks, I used hot glue on the back side of my frame. And this is the spring picture all finished. Again, a simple and affordable project for spring. Now for the 4th and final DIY today, I'm making a bloom where you are planted sign or picture. For this one, no surprise, I'm using a picture frame. This one is from Goodwill and I paid $2.99 for it. Again, I love getting thrifted frames. This one has like the little bead detail on the front, which I love. I first started by just using some scissors to help me get the backing off of this frame, and then I also took out the glass portion of the frame as well. For the frame color, I'm painting it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 different coats of this paint, and because it has like that raised bead look on the front of this frame, I thought it would be really cute to add some distressing. I used my Dollar Tree stencil brush with the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Castle and just dry brush that color over top of the entire frame. For the frame, I'm not going to be using the original backing that came on the frame. I want this to have a wood background, so I'm using these popsicle sticks to look like wood slats. So I just measured them out to see how many I needed, and then I started cutting the 2 like rounded ends off of each side so that those popsicle sticks lay really flat inside of my frame. And I continued to do that until I had all of my popsicle sticks cut on each end, and I just used the first one as a guide to help me cut the rest of them off. Now that I have all of my popsicle sticks cut, I'm now staining all of them with my Craft Smart wood stain in the color brown, and I'm using an old rag to apply the stain. I'm only staining the front side. I don't need to stain the back side because you will not be seeing this. To attach the popsicle sticks to my frame, I'm using hot glue, and I just put the hot glue on the inside of the frame and then pressed the popsicle stick on top of that, and I continued the same step over and over until I had all of my popsicle sticks attached on the inside of my frame. Then for the design that I'm going to be using on my wood, I'm using this Bloom Where You Are Planted stencil that I got in a pack of stencils from Amazon. I'm only going to be using the words on the stencil. I don't have room to use the wreath around it, but I wanted to hold it into place while I'm painting, so I just cut those ends off so that I'm able to tape the stencil onto my frame to keep it from moving around. And this was going to be a little bit more tricky since the stencil is raised up a little bit from the frame, so I just have to be really careful when I'm stenciling my paint color on to just hold the stencil down into place without moving it so I don't have any bleeding underneath each letter. For my word bloom, I used Folk Art chalk paint in the color Cascade. Then the words Where You Are, I used the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. Then for the bottom word Planted, I used the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Vintage Victorian. After the paint was all dry, I then peeled off my stencil. To add some detail to this picture, I'm using, again, one of those little unfinished wood icons from Hobby Lobby, and I'm using this butterfly. I originally started to paint it with that Vintage Victorian color and then decided I wanted it to be a green color, so I'm using the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Sage Shadow for that. Then I'm also using this little watering can from that same icon pack, and for this one I'm painting it in the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Summer Porch. Then for the last step in this project, I'm using hot glue to attach both of those icons at the very top of my picture in a diagonal. This is my Bloom Where You Are Planted picture all finished. It's a really simple and a great piece to add to your home for spring. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it. It really helps out my channel. Also, make sure that you have your notification bells on so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And please don't forget to go check out all of the other ladies' videos that were in today's Fab Five collaboration. And don't forget to enter the giveaway by leaving a comment down in all of our videos. Thank you so much for watching.